So, Jeff Fowler, my colleague on the tech team at the Post, my understanding is that you have something that you want to play for me.
Yeah, that's right.
Hi there, it's Martine.
Ooh.
I'm here with tech columnist Jeffrey Fowler to talk about advancements in AI audio. What? In the last few months, AI audio technology has gotten so good that it's a little scary. You can use AI to generate a podcast about any topic you want. No. Oh my God, Jeff, no. That sounds just like me. You can use it to make any voice say anything. That's obviously I didn't say that, right? Like that's not from an episode of Post Reports.
That's correct. So I made that with software from a company called 11 Labs. And I should say here that the Post also uses 11 Labs to make AI read aloud stories on our website. But I took it a step further. I used less than 5 minutes of audio of your voice hosting Post Reports to make an AI Martine voice that can say literally anything, and it can speak in literally any language.
I'm Martine Powers. Je suis Martine Powers. 我是 Martine Powers.
How about Japanese?
私は Martine Powers です.
The AI is sending you a message, Martine.
I'm coming for your job. Okay, just kidding. This is like 10% funny, and this is 90% like egregiously scary and unsettling. What? I know my own voice pretty well, and that sounds quite just like me.
Yeah, that's what I want to talk with you about today, because it's not just your voice that AI is able to mimic. It's gotten really good at doing everything that goes into making a podcast. It's good at mimicking a casual conversation. It can even recreate some of the nuances of speech that make a voice sound human.
I know we have to get on with this interview, but I can't get over this. I mean, it's amazing, but it's also upsetting.
I think that's the theme of our conversation today. Amazing, but also a little bit upsetting.
From the newsroom of the Washington Post, this is Post Reports. I'm AI Martine Powers. No. I'm going to take it from here. From the newsroom of the Washington Post, this is Post Reports. I'm Martine Powers, the real Martine Powers. It's Tuesday, October 22nd. Today, many of us are grappling with both fascination and fear about the potential of AI. Just this morning, a group of 10,000 artists, actors, and musicians, including Julianne Moore, Kevin Bacon, Rosie O'Donnell, they signed an open letter condemning the unlicensed use of their work to develop AI. At the same time, though, tech companies are still moving full speed ahead on AI. That includes making the most human-sounding artificial voices possible. And so I hopped on a Zoom call with Jeffrey in San Francisco. I wanted to talk to him about how tech companies are trying to capture the human voice with AI, and about the gap that still exists between a machine-generated voice and a real one, like mine. So, and I'm still getting over the shock of all of this. But just tell me a little bit about why you have been thinking about AI voices and why you think that these developments are worth paying attention to.
Well, obviously, they've gotten really good, and that is really amazing and shocking and maybe a little bit upsetting. But I'm personally most interested in it because I'm interested in what it does to us as humans when computers sound like us. How does it change how we interact with them? How does it change what we can do with them? You know, it's kind of like both a leap forward for our ability to interact with computers in a way that feels normal and natural. It opens new doors for like helping us learn things and get information. It's a new way for people also to feel maybe not as lonely in the world if they feel like they can interact naturally with a computer. So, you know, it's amazing. And it also is a little bit disarming. Like you can forget in certain ways that you're talking to a computer. And that has all sorts of potential negative consequences too that we should sort of think about.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, obviously we've had conversations, a lot of conversations over the last couple of years about these developments in AI in audio and in video. And I mean, I was under the impression that they were getting better, but I felt like I could always tell what was an AI voice and what was a real voice. And clearly that's not the case anymore. Or from what I just heard, like I think this stuff has gotten really, really good really fast. Can you talk a little bit about those improvements, like how good AI audio is now and how widespread it is?
Yeah, well, one of the things that happened really in the last couple of months, we've gotten used to now over the last 2 years having chatbots in our lives, right? Those are things that you can text back and forth with, and we kind of now know like what they're good at, what they're bad at, and how to
Mm-hmm.
laugh at them when they do silly things. But in the last couple of months, all of these chatbots that are available to us as consumers, ChatGPT, Gemini from Google, Meta AI from the Facebook people, Copilot from Microsoft, they've all gotten advanced voice modes
Hmm.
where they can do a lot more things that sound like normal humans do. They have been able to ape the sort of intonations of normal human speech, and then also respond so quickly that they really are pretending to be human in certain ways. I'd love to show you kind of what that sounds like.
Oh, sure. I'll brace myself for more for more shocks.
So here, I'm going to use the new ChatGPT. Hey there.
Hey there, how's it going?
Pretty good. Hey, could you help me settle a debate? Which city is better, Washington, D.C. or San Francisco?
Ooh, a classic showdown. It really depends on what you're looking for. DC has that political vibe with all the monuments and museums. It's got a lot of history and a more traditional East Coast feel.
Yeah. But it's a
On the other
swamp.
hand,
I mean, who wants to live in a swamp?
Ouch, Jeff.
DC's summer humidity can be a bit much. San Francisco, it has that cool, foggy weather, plus the iconic Golden Gate Bridge and vibrant tech scene. If you prefer milder temperatures and a
Hey,
laid
but
back
what I want to
vibe,
know is when you
San
come to
Fran,
San Francisco, do you wear flowers in your hair?
only if you're feeling the 60s spirit. San Francisco definitely has that hippie history, especially in neighborhoods like Haight Ashbury.
Huh.
So what I was able to do was ask a question. It responded very quickly, and then I could even cut
Yeah.
it off. It was kind of bantering with me.
Yeah, like you had a little bit of back and forth going with it. I feel like it didn't totally get the swamp thing. Like, I feel like a regular person would be like, oh, yeah, do you see the swamp in a more like political way versus like the literal way? Though I guess you could take it in the literal way too. But so I feel like that was a moment where I was like, not quite getting like what I think a real banter would be like. But it was pretty close. Well, let me ask this. Like, why are tech companies focusing on this now? Like, why is getting AI to sound as human-like as possible clearly a priority for them?
So technologists have been trying to make computers or devices sound like humans literally since the late 1700s. This has been like one of these technological hills to climb
Mm-hmm.
that humans really seem to be drawn towards. And I think one reason why the companies are doing it is because it's out there to be done. Like they want to be able to conquer it. They want to make a machine that sounds convincingly like a human. But there's also a business interest here, right? When it sounds like us, we're more likely to interact with it. So that we develop a habit of putting this bot into our lives and relying on it as our assistant or our friend, or in some cases, our lover, is what some of these companies want to go for. Also, the
Yeah.
more you interact with it, the more data they collect, and especially even more intimate data. And they can use that not only to make the bots better, but also just learn more about us and then sell us more things.
There is one piece of AI technology that I'd actually heard about before this interview and was part of the reason why I really wanted to talk with you today about all this. So that piece of technology is, I believe, called Notebook LM, and it's from Google. Talk a little bit more about that one and why it's something that you have been reporting on.
So Notebook LM feels to me like maybe one of the first real runaway hits for Google in its efforts to take AI and put it into a product that normal consumers would use, right? A lot of this stuff has been in the lab or they've had these chatbots, but Google's been really looking for where it goes next. And Notebook LM might be that. So what it does is it's a website. You can upload any documents you want to it. You could upload a book. You could upload some articles, some web pages, recordings of interviews you've done, and then you can interact with it. So on one level, you could like chat with it. You can ask it questions about your documents. You can ask it to summarize it, or, and this is the thing that's really caught everyone's attention, you can ask it to turn it into a fake podcast. So if there's, in my case, like that really long New Yorker article that you just didn't quite get time to read, but maybe you're in the car for 15 minutes and you could listen to somebody talk about.
Wait, so can I try to make one of these like fake AI podcasts?
Absolutely. Okay, what document or documents would you like to base it on?
Okay, so I was thinking of something that felt relevant to my life. I've been trying to do gardening at home, and I want to make a rain garden in my backyard. And DC has like a 32-page how-to manual for homeowners about how to make a rain garden. It has all these like measurements of stuff you need to do and a list of whatever. And I haven't read the whole thing. And I'm wondering maybe that could be a podcast that I could listen to instead of reading this whole thing about how to make a rain garden.
This sounds like actually the ideal use for Notebook LM. So send me the file.
Okay, I will send you, I think it's a PDF. It reads PDFs, right?
Yeah. All right. So I've got your file. Now I'm just going to the Notebook LM site. It's free for anybody to use. I'm going to start a new notebook and press upload sources. The AI is thinking about it.
Woo!
Analyzing.
Okay. While we're waiting for the AI to finish its podcast, can you tell me a little bit about who the target audience is for this technology?
So the original premise of it was make it easier for people to kind of like interact with and go through their notes.
Yeah.
But this podcast function goes in a slightly different direction and makes it, I think, much more interesting to a really wide population. I could imagine this being extremely, extremely attractive to students who get a reading assignment for class, and maybe you got your section coming up.
A podcast about it for 15 minutes.
Exactly.
Yeah, but well, I'm clearly bringing a negative attitude toward this, but yeah, that's cheating. The whole point is you have to read the assignment and engage with it. I mean, maybe, I don't know, maybe that's the future and teachers will be okay with it. But yeah, like I see the potential applications if you're trying to speed read something or trying to just like get through a body of like words or pages or whatever quickly. But part of me is like, I don't know. Like, I feel like this is making it too easy.
Well, in the context of students, I wondered the same thing. And I spoke to a couple of educators who think a lot about sort of how AI is shaping education. And they saw both a pro and a con. So the pro that they saw was, hey, there's lots of different kinds of learners out there. Some people are dyslexic. Some people just learn better by listening. I mean, Martine, the reason why Post Reports is so popular is that there is a large world of people out there who learn better about the world by listening to you tell them about it than they do maybe by reading a story in the newspaper.
Yeah. To be fair, that is like part of the sell of our podcast is that if you're interested in Washington Post journalism, like, yes, you could read it in text online and oftentimes but sometimes you could listen to a conversation about that journalism. And that is really appealing to people in a lot of ways. Okay, so we're going to take a pause there. And then after the break, we will finally get to hear our brand new AI-generated rain garden podcast. And we will see if this thing can make a podcast better than we can. Okay, we'll be right back.
The garden podcast is ready. So the podcast that it generated is 12 minutes and 39 seconds long.
Wow. The exact amount of time that I want to spend with a podcast talking about how to make a rain garden.
All right, let's take a listen.
And before we start, just to be clear, we only gave the Notebook LM website that dry PDF of the rain garden manual, and it turned into this back and forth conversation between two people who are not real. So the voices you're about to hear are totally artificial.
All right, let's dive into the world of rain gardens today.
Rain gardens.
Yeah, maybe not the most exciting topic on the surface, but trust me.
Yeah.
When we get into it, they're really cool.
Mm.
We're going to be taking a look at this homeowner's manual from the University of Wisconsin Extension.
Oh.
And they've got some really practical advice on how to actually make one of these things.
Sounds good.
So if you've ever thought about putting one in your yard, stay tuned.
It's just like, that's exactly how I would conduct this interview.
It's really mimicking what would naturally happen if we didn't have so much pavement.
Gotcha. Okay, so I have some questions.
Okay.
What's to stop this from becoming like a muddy mess or a mosquito breeding ground?
Yeah, those are great questions.
I just learned about rain gardens.
Yeah.
And their first question that he asked was my first question. What about mosquitoes?
Well, yeah, I feel like my reaction is so mixed because it's like, yes, I am out of a job just because it feels like such an organic conversation. Like maybe there are some moments where it feels a little awkward, but like, frankly, there's awkwardness in real conversations too. And so I don't know, that just feels like very, it feels like they're really nailing like the cadence of back and forth. But also at the same time, I am thinking, yeah, as someone who wants to know this information, if this podcast doesn't exist in real life, I actually do feel like this is a really useful, efficient way to understand what I'm supposed to get out of this document and to learn. And I guess if the point is of learning, then maybe this is a way to help people learn.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that the folks at Google who made Notebook LM told me is that they spent a lot of time working on that structure of how a podcast goes and those little human touches of human-like touches, I should say, of the pauses in the conversations, the little interruptions.
Mm-hmm.
They said that nobody really wants to listen to two robots talk to each other. So the whole thing goes through a final round of podcastizing, if you will, where they try to insert these things that make it sound more pleasing and more natural to the human ear. And clearly they're effective, right? Because you get sort of drawn in and you want to listen to these two voices and talking.
So it feels like they're just trying to steal my job is essentially what's happening here.
I thought about that a lot too, right? Which is, wait a minute, what does this mean for professional journalists who work in audio, or just, any professional journalist, even beyond audio, whose job it is to explain things, break things down? I landed on the idea that I don't think this is actually going to take your job, Martine, because what you do is very highly choreographed and edited, where you make sure that it's entertaining and that there are correct ideas at the core of everything that you hear about in the show.
Well, that it's rigorously fact-checked and that, we're having conversations about how do we make sure that we're presenting this in the fairest way, in the most accurate way.
Absolutely. I see this more as filling in this kind of long tail of things that nobody would ever make a podcast about, right? Or even think of it this way. Think of all of those city council and county council meetings that there are no longer journalists around to summarize and help present to the community. Now somebody could just take the recording of it, upload it, and you could sort of have a condensed version that people in the neighborhood might listen to.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I'm curious and trying to be open-minded. And at the same time, I feel like even in that example, I can hear in my head like so many red flags of like ways that this could go wrong. What happens if something is misinterpreted? Yes, a bot can, it sounds like, sound fluid and conversational in ways that haven't been the case before, but are they bringing that level of rigor and thoughtfulness to how they're actually like framing these conversations? But also, I mean, I think like my basic question is, are these podcasts that are being made by AI actually accurate? Like, are they accurately summarizing the contents of what they're reading?
This is a really core question. And I think one of the things about this technology this voice technology is that it's so amazing, and when you hear it at first, that it is disarming. And being disarming means that we put down our guards about, well, is it telling the truth? Is it highlighting really and pulling out as it summarizes the things that really matter? So when I was testing this for my column in the Post, after I wrote my column, I had Notebook LM make a podcast version of my column. And then I listened to that. And what I noticed it also did was made up a fact.
Well, there you go. That's, I think, a pretty significant shortcoming if it's just like putting in errors that aren't being fact-checked.
But again, if that's when it's something that there's like high stakes in the information quality, but there's a lot of things in our lives that are much lower stakes. I think it's so interesting that, so in the tech world, I'm usually in your seat, and I'm the one that I feel like sometimes that I'm over in the corner saying, hey, wait a minute, these things are filled with inaccuracies. We can't just be okay with that. Like, that's not all right. And I think it is extremely important. And the sort of the thing I would tell everybody about Notebook LM is that think about all the ways you can use it and really explore it, but we have to be realistic about its limitations. One of the things that human journalists are really good at is context, is putting things in the right context so that you know what's really important and what's not. As an experiment, I also uploaded the transcript of the vice presidential debate to Notebook LM, and it was terrible. It didn't bring in the context of the sort of the tone that debates had with Trump.
Yeah.
It acted like it was shocking that Walls would bring up Trump's election denying. Just it lacked all the context. But to be fair to the system, I had only given it the text of the debate, and it is designed to base everything it says on that text. It's supposed to be grounded just in that material and really only minimally bring in that sort of larger context from the internet. I mean, that's the thing that we got to remember here. Again, having the human voice makes you forget that you are talking with a chatbot. And a chatbot still has all of these limitations and still is basically a really, really, really souped up version of autocomplete. It is not rooted in any actual knowledge about the world, any knowledge about anything. It is just telling you what is, statistically speaking, most likely to come next.
So I want to talk about a couple other ways in which AI audio is starting to make its way into the world in some ways that are problematic. And one thing that stuck out to me recently, some of our colleagues have worked on a project looking at AI of Vice President Kamala Harris, former President Donald Trump, and the ways in which some of these like faked pieces of audio are starting to make their way out into the world and creating a false impression of what presidential candidates are saying. Can you talk a little bit about that and some of the other kind of developments that have caught your attention that create some problems?
Yeah, I mean, this stuff can sound so real, especially in small snippets, that it can mislead people. Criminals like to use it, and we've seen fraudsters, take snippets of people's voices and try to trick family members into giving them money or all sorts of things. We've also seen politicians make use of AI and AI voices, again, like not necessarily to intentionally mislead, but maybe somewhere in a gray zone that's uncomfortable. One example I can think of is New York Mayor Eric Adams sent out a robocall to his constituents in which he spoke Spanish and Urdu and Mandarin and a couple of other languages.
Hola, soy el alcalde Eric Adams. Queremos invitarlo a venir a trabajar con la ciudad de Nueva York y ayudar a...
Were people like, wow? I'm just imagining regular New Yorkers being like, it's incredible that he speaks Urdu. Like, we didn't know that.
He used the exact same technology that I used to clone your voice. He says, look, this is just about being in touch with constituents, but also maybe he made himself seem like he's a little bit more culturally competent than he really is. And then, of course, there are people who want to mislead and misinform and are using AI to, make people think that candidates said things that they never said.
What about instances in which people are willingly giving over their voice for these purposes? Like, tell me what's going on there.
Yeah. Well, in addition to these chatbots now having that sort of like real-time voice that you can chat with, Meta pushed into getting and paying for celebrities to be those voices. And you can go in and you can select what celebrity voice you want to interact with. And the choices include Judi Dench, Aquafina, and all sorts of people. And this really captured people's imaginations when it first came out. They're like, wow, now you can sort of have a conversation with this kind of famous person. But after playing with it a little bit, I very quickly had a really negative kind of view of it. It seemed very lifeless and soulless. You want to hear a little sample?
Yeah, I would love to hear that.
Let's hear Judi Dench.
I'm a Meta AI, your friendly assistant. I can answer questions, provide information, and even generate images. How can I help you today?
That was Judi Dench. Let's hear a little Aquafina.
Here's a joke in Aquafina style. So, I was at the mall, and I saw a sign that said, "Please do not eat the furniture." And I'm like, who's eating furniture? Is that a thing now?
So here's the thing. They may have aped certain aspects of these celebrities' voices. But the reason they're celebrities, the reason why we all feel like we have a relationship with them is because they also have personalities.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's one thing that I would say about both Dame Judi Dench and Aquafina is that they are not, they're not subservient, right? They both have a lot of attitude and they're not going to take it from anybody. And yet here Silicon Valley has turned their voices into these servants, that are here to help and here to do whatever you want. And the more you interact with it, the more kind of like soulless it becomes. You almost forget that it's even the celebrity anymore.
Yeah, that it's not just the quality of somebody's voice, it's how they say things, and it's the ideas behind the voice, and that that it makes you realize the shortcomings of what it takes to really sound like a fully fleshed out human. Jeff, you said earlier that reporting on these new developments in AI and thinking a lot about this has made you think more about big questions around what it means to be human. Tell me more about that and what you see as some of the takeaways of all this.
Yeah, so we often talk about this thing called the Uncanny Valley, right? And the Uncanny Valley is when a robot or some piece of technology is trying to be human and fails at it in just these sort of subtle ways. But because of these subtle differences, these subtle failures, it ends up feeling creepy. And I think now that the voices are getting so human-like, our notion of what is the Uncanny Valley is going to shift a little bit. And it's no longer that they don't sound quite right. It's going to be that they lack kind of a human understanding or a human sense of relationship. My background, when I was in college, I studied anthropology. I did not study computer science or something. And one of the things that anthropologists understand as being at the core of our humanness is that we all have a sense of relatedness to other people, right? Like, it can be as basic as you're my mom, you're my uncle, you're my neighbor. And that sense of relatedness with another person always then defines the conversation that you're having with them. But these bots have not been programmed to have any relationship with us other than servant. And because of that, that's where they really start to feel not human. That's where they really let you down.
Interesting. Jeff, thank you so much for sharing all of this, as shocking and occasionally disturbing as I might have found it. This is really fascinating.
You bet.
Jeff Fowler is a technology columnist for The Post. And before we go, one more thing about this story. I mentioned briefly one of the ways that AI is now influencing politics, this flood of audio deepfakes of Trump and Harris all over the internet. When I listen to examples of these fake versions of their voices, it can be really hard to tell that they're AI generated. So some of our colleagues here at The Post have created a clever tutorial for how to spot political fakes. For example, I didn't realize this, but one clue is that fake audio might have music in the background to mask speech oddities of something that's AI generated. Real speech, though, often has distinct features that are harder to copy, like stutters, pauses, and breaths. Knowing what to look out for can help you discern what is real and what is fake. Look for a link to this breakdown in our show notes and at postreports.com. Now, on to something else I've been following today. So, at the airport when you're at your gate, waiting for your flight to start boarding, and then as soon as they make the announcement, not only do people start crowding the gate, there are also those impatient passengers who try to board with the wrong group. Well, guess what? There's actually a name for those folks. Airline employees often refer to them as quote-unquote gate lice. And one airline is trying to tackle that. American Airlines has been piloting a system in recent weeks to flag when people attempt to board before their group has been called. Experts in human behavior say travelers who mass at the gate ahead of their turn do so out of a tendency to conform and out of a sense of competition. American said that when someone tries to board with the wrong group, its software gives an audible signal and shows the gate agent a message with the correct group. That's it for Post Reports. Thanks for listening. Today's show was produced by Emma Talkoff with help from Alana Gordon. It was mixed by Sean Carter and edited by Peter Bresnan with help from Monica Campbell. I'm Martine Powers. We'll be back tomorrow with more stories from the Washington Post.